It is still the conversation on Lagos television, and this particular Friday, we'll be looking at domestic violence. And when do you know when to leave? When you are being abused in a relationship or in marriage? And I did say before that break that it's not only limited to any of the genders. Sometimes a man or a woman is the victim, or a guy or a lady, they are usually the victim of domestic violence. It comes in different shades. It could be physical, it could be psychological, but when exactly do you know it is time for you to leave? Because people will come and appeal. You have to wait because of your children, you have to wait because of what people will say out there, forgetting the fact that your life matters a lot when it comes to safeguarding yourself from domestic violence. We have somebody who is very interested in marriage and relationship with us on the program this Friday morning. We have Aremo. Tobi, it's our pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Is Aremo your surname?
Aremo is my surname, yeah.
Because I'm a Yoruba guy, and Aremo, is Aremo not the prince?
Well, yeah, Aremo is the prince that, you know, so there can be many prince. Yes, the next in line. That's the first prince. So Aremo is basically the heir to the throne. Okay. Yeah, so it's a title that is my surname. Okay.
So you're from a royal family?
Well, I don't know about that.
Okay, talking about domestic violence, what really would you consider as violence, or as violence rather, when it comes to a man and a woman having a relationship or being in a marriage?
Okay, so domestic violence basically, you know, covers any form of abuse at all that intentionally seeks to hurt, manipulate, or take advantage of the other person.
That's a lot. Hurts,
manipulate, or take advantage of. So if it falls within these three parameters, we term it as domestic violence in that sense. So, like you said, it can be verbal, where it's just words you are using. You are saying things, you are undermining the other person and making them feel less of themselves. It could be physical, which most times we kind of place as the highest one. But sometimes,
because we see
because
that.
It's physical, because you can see it more. But I can assure you that sometimes verbal, which affects emotions, can be more can have more negative effect than even physical in that sense. Like I said, there's psychological, there's verbal, there's physical. There's but there's neglect, something called neglect as well, when you don't give them the necessary attention, or say a parent that decides to leave a child, does not pay school fees, does not give the child food, and that happens also within the parameters of marriage as well. So domestic violence basically covers that wide spectrum.
So it is broad? It
is broad.
So how do we recognize domestic violence, probably in a relationship or a marriage?
Okay, because
what are
of
the signs that we are likely to see that will tell you that, okay, this is a red flag and I need to know that domestic violence is coming in gradually?
Yeah, so it's always best to check for possibilities first. Okay, so like you said, red flags, meaning what are pointers that there's a possibility that I can experience domestic violence with this person. Now, say, let's take it one by one. Say physical abuse, for example. Now, when you see somebody that, when they're angry, they break things. Now, they don't touch you, but they break everything around you. They bring their phone, smash it on the floor. They carry TV, smash it. One day, probably it's your head that's going to be smashed. That's a pointer that the person has an anger issue. And when there's nothing to smash, you'll be the next person to be smashed. Okay, when you see somebody that consistently raises their hand against you, even if they don't eat you, and you're like, oh, they love me so much, they're able to control themselves. Because sometimes, you know, we get discolored with all those emotional things. And say, it's because he loves me, because she loves me, that's why she held herself. One day, the will to hold back will be lost. So all those things, those are red flags. Verbal emotional abuse, when you see somebody that always makes you doubt yourself, someone that always makes you feel less of yourself when you're together. Somebody that you want to ask something, but you have to have a 2-hour pep talk with yourself on how to...
Can I go and face him?
Yes. When you have that, these are signs already that if you stay in that relationship, you're going to have domestic violence.
So Those are the signs.
Those are key pointers, and they are
leave.
very basic. Well, those are signs that that person has the possibility of exhibiting those characters.
What's if you are married already?
Now, if you are married already, now is now is now post. Okay, now you're in the relationship. Now you are married, and you've seen these things. Now there are different contexts depending on the marriage situation. Things like how long have you been married? Okay, the situation that came about your marriage, all those things. But usually the solution or the underlying factor usually is, are the two people willing to stay? Are they willing to walk through it? Say, for example, say it's a man that is abusing the woman. Okay, now when you ask a man, this man, that are you willing to stay? What it means is that, are you willing to go through the right therapy to be able to deal with yourself so that you can live properly with this woman? Okay. Now, in a situation where that man does not even accept that he needs help, does not even accept that he has an issue, okay, if this woman decides to stay with him, she's doing it at the detriment of herself because he has not even accepted help. Okay. Now, in some situations, because of history, how people grow up, the environment around which they find themselves, the truth is there are many people going through all sorts of traumas. Okay. And you'll find out that some of these people, the reason why some people are prone to eating people or talking one way or the other is because of the trauma they've gone through growing up themselves.
I was even going to ask you that, what are those factors that can trigger domestic violence, be it in a male or a female?
Yes, so one, family history is a key issue. Okay, so if you come from a home where your parents normally talk to themselves shouting at each other, now it's just expected that child will probably grow up thinking that the way to communicate is to shout at the other person, to demean the other person. Now, if that child does not at any point meet somebody else to correct that, that child will probably go into a man and a woman that behaves like that and thinks demeaning others to raise yourself is the way to live life.
It's the way of life.
It's the way of life. Now, that in itself is now a pointer. Okay, that is a trigger. That person has even if this person, because of, say, person gets into a professional setting, and then there's a rule of you don't talk to your colleagues like this. Now, that rule can help the person adjust for a while. But the moment there's an external experience that the person cannot handle, what happens is that the person now responds in that matter. So if personally you look at yourself and you find out that you are quick to get angry, for example, when there's a meeting with colleagues, people are brainstorming and your ideas are not usually taken, and you feel that you're always sitting, you're always getting furious about it, but you comport yourself because it's a professional setting, it means that there's a possibility of that in you. So you need to go and, now in this part of the world, when we talk about therapy, people think that it's because you're going mad or it makes you less of yourself. Okay, but it means that you need to go for therapy. You need to talk to someone, talk through your childhood experience, or sometimes it's even things like heartbreak. Okay, heartbreaks, changes people, transforms the lives of people in all sort of different ways. So when you see that you've had bad experiences, particularly dealing with people, you should know that when you want to get married or you are getting a relationship, you must look inwards and look at what are the things in my life that have possibility of truncating and affecting the other person negatively, and then actively deal with it. But most times we find that people are first liars to themselves. They don't even agree that they have an issue. Okay. So that brings a lot of issues.
Okay, aside from the factors like growing up in an abusive environment, what are the other factors that can trigger such?
Okay, so threshold for pain is one thing. Threshold, what do I mean? We live in a world where everything is not always going to be 100% rosy. Now, depending on also, there's a lot of factors that connects to how people are raised. So depending on how people are raised, their threshold for how they handle pressure differs. Now, based on that, so a person's threshold of pressure is also a factor. How high is your pressure threshold? Now, when a person hits their highest pressure frequency, and then anything beyond that, they most likely will act based on what is internal. Do you get? So in the end is, if there's any form of, because, you know, if I was to take a foam and I soak it in clean water and I squeeze it out, what comes out will be clean water, because that is what is in that foam. If I was to take the same foam, a clean foam, and say put it in, say, okra soup, if I squeeze it, what comes out is okra soup. So if a person can blame their action on pressure, that was because I was pressured, it was because it was beyond my pressure, but it only came out because it existed within you. Yes. So it all falls back to proper analysis of who are you as a person. So, and that's why we have all forms of what are they called, tests, you know, psychomotor tests, psychological tests, all these things that we call what are these very popular ones? Phlegmatic, sanguine, all these tests. Now, all these tests are very important for people to be able to understand. I am prone to this kind of thing. I am prone to this kind of thing. I'm prone to this kind of thing, and then you now actively deal with it. But so another issue is lack of self-awareness. When you don't even understand yourself, when you cannot utterly, and that we find out that,
or when you have complex and you feel that your partner is superior to you.
Yes. Okay, particularly, and that I think that engagement happens maybe more with men. Okay, so you find
because
that
men have ego problem.
Men have ego issues, yeah. And so you find out that a man is quick to be insecure if he sees that the lady is with, by one reason or the other, is growing faster than he is. Now, also because we live in an environment that sometimes there's a lot of pressure on the man to always be the first. There's that pressure on every man, particularly in the context of relationship. When a guy is with a girl, he expects that career-wise, I should be ahead of you. He expects that financial-wise, I should be ahead of you, because that is the expectation society has placed on that man.
Yeah, but it doesn't take that form sometimes.
It doesn't take that form. But many people do not understand that sometimes, because of this lady's history, the truth is she can be way ahead of you. Now, a man that is not self-aware, is given to his ego. What he does is that he's now going to be very manipulative, such that he's going to stunt this woman's growth. Okay, he's going to stop her from flying just so that he can feel good. He can feel that I am the one on top in that sense. So there's a lot of factors. That's why it's always very important for people to heal before they go into relationships and marriages. Okay. They need to deal with themselves. You know,
I know that so many women will be interested in this particular topic, but before I hand you over to my colleagues over there, from your experience over the years, the figures, the victims, which is more, male or female?
Okay, so data says female is more. It's until recent times that men are now speaking up. So usually we are always not unsure, because over the years, men do not speak up about abuse.
They speak of their emotions.
Because also, like you said, if you say your wife is abusing you, it feels like a slap on your face. In that sense, it affects your ego as a person. But it's just in recent times that people are now being informed and say it's not about you. You need to voice out and all that. But currently, figures says that the women are usually the victims, and that may make more sense as well, because in the context of relationships, you find out that the man is the one that leads, and if you are the one that leads, you determine a lot of things that happen within the context of that relationship. So, right now, data says that it's the women that are more victims than the men. Okay, Joy.
Okay, so I also want you to address one other factor that just came to mind now. Do you think that because of our cultural setting, because of the pressure that society puts, especially on the women, and that is why abuse against women is prevalent, because when a woman is going to her husband's house, they tell you, you can't come back here again. There's no room here again for you. When you get to your husband's house, whatever your eyes see, you take. You know, those kind of things. And sometimes when women go through abuse, when those voices are still ringing in their head, they tend to stay and endure. I also want you to address that.
Okay, so our culture, I think when we look at the context of those conversations, usually the idea when the women, bring the younger woman and tell her that, you know what, you're going to the husband's house, whatever you see is what you see. The context there usually is to tell that woman, to teach her patience in that sense, okay? Because these women have lived marriages as well, and they feel that, okay, from the wealth of our own knowledge, let's, impact some to you in that sense. So usually it's important that the listener is not able to interpret it into their own context. Okay? So if a woman goes to her husband's house, it's important that she knows that...
Or if a lady is in a relationship.
Okay, so for a relationship, if a lady is in a relationship, you must know that...
Just look at the two.
Yes, let's look at the two. Now, the two have different contexts. Now, a lady in a relationship knows that I can leave.
Okay.
For a lady in a relationship, you must be aware that this relationship is not do or die in that sense. Like, there is a door open. I can choose to take it. So once a lady is in a relationship and you're experiencing abuse in a relationship and you are choosing to stay in a relationship, now at that point, they say, normally we train people that, and we say that never blame your victim, and that's valid. But a woman that you're in a relationship that's supposed to be the most rosiest portion, like you said, and the guy is already victimizing you, is already eating you, you had better use the door fast without thinking twice.
Okay. Because
it's still a relationship and nothing has seemingly bound you together in that sense. So, but for marriage, it's a different ball game. You've said your vows, and all that. So usually, the context is when you look at that, if it now happens that the man you're now with is not who you thought him to be.
Okay.
First time he raises hands on you. Now, even our culture generally places some safeguards, some things that we're supposed to. That's why you find out that a woman can then go to maybe to the husband's house, call their family, and they have a family meeting, and then the elder will say, do this, and everybody aligns because that is what elder has said. And usually, this used to work. Then. And that principle is actually still very, very important, even now. It's just that many of us in our generation now, we throw away these contexts and we feel that we want to live life by ourselves. So we don't listen to others. So even if an elder was to say, okay, you are doing this to your wife, don't do that again, else we are going to banish from family. Nobody cares anymore. So if you have a husband that nobody can talk to him and he's abusing you, escape.
Okay. I'm still going to ride on Joy's question.
Okay.
We live in a society wherein people see you as inferior if your marriage or your relationship is not successful. And so many times, especially women, they are afraid to lose their marriage. What are my family members going to say? What are my friends going to say? Will I be living alone without the father of my children being there with me? And so it puts a lot of pressure on women especially. How can we overcome this? Because some women will stay at all costs, and before you open your eyes, they have lost their lives. And then you start blaming the devil. Or the family member will start saying, oh, she should have left, forgetting what she had been told before she got married, like Joy said.
Okay, so truth is, the society places a lot of pressure on husband and wife. Okay, but now that we're talking about the wife, there's a lot of expectation. Okay, and sometimes women must learn to differentiate between personal internal expectations you place on yourself and society. It's like how in the university there's something called a general list when you want to just get into the school. There's a list, and then there's like a VC list kind of thing. Every human being, you must have a list of people that these are the people that what they say matters to me. Now, when you say the society expects me to be like this, who is the society? What has the society given you that allows you such loyalty to that society? These are questions that women must ask. Okay, so if you are saying society expects me to live like this, is that society a person? Can you put a face to that society? So usually what happens is that people are loyal to theories. People are loyal to word in the air, nothing concrete. So people expect you to stay in your husband's house. In what context did the society tell you that? So we must understand that so when you look at your life And like we're talking about, there's an abuse situation. Husband is eating you, is abusing you financially. Everything you earn goes to him, and he bets.
So we also have
wastes
financial
everything.
abuse.
Yes,
Yes.
there's financial abuse as well. Okay, where a partner prevents you from spending your own money. Okay, or just spend it anyhow they want to. Okay, say for example, your husband takes the wife's money and then go and use it to bet and just keeps lavishing it like that. That's financial abuse in itself as well. Okay, so in that kind of situation, you've tried everything you can do. You've called people to speak with him. You've told him to go for therapy. You have gone for therapy. You've done everything you need to do. You look at your list. Who is the society that is telling me to stay here? If you cannot put a face to that society and that person cannot help you, because sometimes you find out that in situations like that, like I said, because of some of these husbands do not even have a clue what they are doing because of their history. They probably saw their grandfather do the same thing, they saw their father do the same thing. So they just think that that's how
life is.
That's how life is for them. So it's until the wife takes a stand and say, you know what, if you don't change, I'm leaving you. And she goes to rent a house somewhere, separation. There's a place for separation. That's when he's alone. By the time he stays 1 month alone in his house, then he realizes that, okay, maybe there's something wrong with me. And then he can reset. He can go and talk to someone that can actually help him. Usually that happens as well. So women must be willing to take some bold steps. Okay, so the ultimate, we don't usually advise for, the first step is not always divorce.
Okay.
Really. There are different
Options.
And one of them is separation. Okay, you can separate from this person first while they look for help. While somebody is helping them, now by the time their head is correct, by the time they've reset them and all that, then we can now bring them back together.
Okay. These days, there's something you don't see or hear on social media. I've seen ladies, or I've heard ladies say, I'd rather cry in a G-Wagon than be laughing on keke. So, what role now does self-esteem? And of course, psychological manipulation now play in keeping victims in an abusive relationship.
That now is really sad as well, because sometimes we can easily blame it on the society and say that the society has placed a lot of emphasis on material things. But the truth is, what makes us human beings human is our power of will. We can decide what is going to have influence on us and what will not have influence on us. Okay, so when a person has factored that my happiness is not as valuable as money, that person needs huge help. That person will endure any form of abuse as long as he's inside the G-Wagon. Beat me, eat me, make me
your
feel like
life is not
myself.
even guaranteed.
Just make sure I'm in G-Wagon and there's money to take me to the hospital back and forth.
Is that not insane?
Now that is a huge low self-esteem, and many people are in that state. Unfortunately, I still always tie back to family. Because how did they become like that? Yes.
Exactly.
What values did the parent instill in that person? So you see that this person, there's nothing you want to tell this person that they will hear. Because what they will feel is you don't like them, or they tell you are jealous because you are in keke, you want me to join you in keke. Because they've considered everything and they felt that, okay, my life is not worth much if I'm not in the G-Wagon. Even if I'm laughing in the keke, I'm not as valuable. So they've concluded that their life is not, they value their life. They've compared it with a cost. And they've said, my life is not up to this amount. So this is what can give me value. So anything you tell them, they will not care. Okay. So lack of self-esteem is part of the reasons that make people stay in an abusive relationship. Now, sometimes when you find a woman in particularly, now, like you said as well at the beginning, doesn't just apply to women, it applies to men as well. Because
there was a time we used to have a particular show on this station, and we had a particular man calling us from Magodo, telling us that before they go to church every Sunday, he's usually flogged by his wife.
Wow.
Then he will get to church and keep quiet without saying anything, waiting for the next Sunday when he's going to receive another set of flogging. So as we have pressure on the women, we also have pressure
the men,
or how would I call it now? a man would not want to come out and tell you that, okay, before I go to church every Sunday, I'm always being flogged. And people will tell you that as a man, you cannot cry.
Okay. Yeah.
So how do we marry the two together? And do we have adequate laws in place protecting those who are facing one form of abuse or the other? I know we have such in Lagos, but let's just look at it nationally now.
Now, for this particular example you gave now, for example, now, it's still connected to low self-esteem. Okay, because that man is getting his value from what people say, not from his own self-awareness.
Okay. Can a man come out and be crying, my wife is beating me?
That's the thing. He has checked his life and said, okay, I would rather take this flogging than expose myself. So he rather appear strong than be strong. Appearance. So it's still appearance.
But the man was dying inside.
And he should have asked for help. For example, after service, why can't you run to your pastor and say, Pastor, my wife is flogging me. Help me. Now, what would have happened is that he would have exposed his weakness to the pastor, but he would have gotten help.
Yeah.
So he was focused on, I want to appear a certain way, more than what was really happening with him. So those are things we need to look at. People value the appearance. That's why sometimes couples are having fights. They will still wear anko. The same to party. They will all dance together. At the moment they get home, everybody goes their separate way. Appearance. And when their appearance like that, what happens is that it is difficult for you to get help when you are focused on how I appear than how I really am. Now, thank God for Lagos State that, has put different measures in place. You can pick up a phone number, just call people, and they reach out to you and all that. And I think a number of states in Nigeria as well, I think they've also copied the model as well. But I don't think it's very much across Nigeria in particular, okay? Because we still don't think abuse is a thing, particularly things like sexual or verbal abuse. Okay, if a woman was to just go to the police station and say that my husband has been abusing, even say my husband has been abusing me, my husband has been taking my money, for example, they will most likely say, what's wrong? He's not your husband. That kind of thing. Okay, so
even when a young lady is raped and you go out there, they will start telling you that, oh, look at what you're wearing.
Asking questions and saying, yes, all that. Rather than first, let's get the person that did this to you. So even as much as there are systems, I still believe that there should still be more sensitization. Okay. There should be more, people should still be informed. People at all levels, whether it is those that are going to enforce the law. So the regular police guy at the station should be aware of these things. He should know how to speak
to the victim.
Yes, to the victims. So that if a lady just walks in, or a man even, a man that he comes with all the 6 packs, and he comes and says, my wife is flogging me, don't say, as a big like this, they flog you. But
that will always be the first thing.
That will be the first thing people will say.
Are you not a man?
Are you not a man?
Yeah.
Why are we laughing? Exactly.
You see? Because of that as well. So there has to be that teaching. People have to be taught that. And because, see, a large part of abuse, even though there's something called psychological abuse, but a large part of abuse is psychological. Now, there's something called grooming. Grooming is when an elderly person says sexually abuses the other person, but this person feels very indebted to this person. Now, usually it doesn't start out with abuse. This elderly person or this other person that has power does things for this younger girl, let me use that word, that makes them feel like they love them. So say if it's a teenager, maybe buy things for them on their birthdays, particularly that teenager does not have that kind of thing from their parents. Buy things for them, takes them out, on their birthday shows up in school for PTA. Like the person is like a presence in their life. So this young girl now feels like this person cares about me.
So I owe him something.
I owe him something. Now, this person is doing all that good
with a
just
target,
so that I can abuse you. Such that even when this person abuses this person still feels like I was the one that messed up.
Joy, your question.
So my question now is, what role are the religious organizations playing?
Yeah.
Because I'm a Christian, and it's sad. I have heard some religious leaders say, I'm not the one to tell her to leave her husband's house. And they keep encouraging you, endure, endure. At what point does patience and endurance become a suicidal mission?
Yeah.
Do you think that our religious leader, because we are very religious on this side, do you think that they are throwing enough weight to supporting whether you are a man or a woman to tell you it's time to live for your life?
Okay, so I believe that, like you said, we are very religious people on this side of the world. That means that our religious heads have a lot of say on our marriages and how we act. Now, depending on the person, so it's also still a person issue. Now, I know religious leaders that if you tell them there's an abuse situation, okay, and it may sound funny, they will first, if a woman comes to them and say, my husband is beating me, they will find boys. They will first beat that man. Then they will now call the husband and wife that, okay, now we heard that this happened. We need to solve this issue. Because they know that if they call the husband and wife first and they solve it, they cannot beat him again.
Okay.
I have a question.
Now, that's even on the lighter note. But the idea is that it depends on the religious leader. But every religious leader that feels responsible for the other person, they should be bold enough to be able to tell the woman, you know what, at this point you can't use patience. You need to step out. Like I said, there are different methods, there are different things that can be done. And one of them, like I said, is separation. Now, when a religious leader wants to save face and doesn't want to upset the man or the woman at the expense of the other person, then that person is also now aiding and abetting that abuse. But generally, I think that religious leaders will take a stand and say that, you know what, wife, it's time for you to leave us at this time while we sort this man out. Or husband, this one that your wife has been doing for you, we need to solve it. You know what, why not go here for a while we talk through these things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Since our topic is domestic violence when it's time to leave, leaving an abusive relationship is still the beginning. That is the starting point. So how does a survivor now start to put himself or herself back together financially, socially, and of course mentally? Yeah.
So usually, particularly if it's a marriage situation, and say it didn't work out, the man was not willing to get help, or whichever, but that was the woman, whichever way, and they had to, go apart, get divorced. It always takes its toll one way or the other, and it can be in any form. It can be financially, it can be socially, it can be psychologically, but importantly, it's psychologically and emotionally. Because if you can undo those two, you find out that you are able to fit in again, able to manage yourself, to fit into other things. So one of the things usually is that people are still very wary of counseling, therapy. Okay, people do not still think that it's something, because when you say you need to go for counseling, people think that it means they are going local or something. Okay, but such a person, they need to go for counseling, they need to go for therapy, they need to be talked through, they need to talk through their experiences, they need to vent all the things they feel. Do you feel anger? Do you feel sorrow? They need to do that. Two is that they need to maximize the gift of community. Okay, they should have they should not isolate themselves, because when you isolate yourself, your healing will take. But most times, what people do is they just isolate themselves, probably just disappear, go to one country, nobody can find them, and just go and hide. Now that makes the matters worse. You don't need to isolate yourself. You need to stay connected to family, to friends that can help you. That sense of community is a huge part in helping you. Like we said, if you belong to a church or whatever religious organization you belong to as well, that is also a place where you can have community that can help you. So two things: seek counseling, stay connected to community. When those are two places to start from. When you do that, you find out that you're able to trace your steps to every other thing. Okay,
for those young couple or ladies and guys who are out there with that mentality, which Adebimpe narrated the other time, that I must be in G-Wagon, no matter what I'm facing, because he's rich, because she's rich, I must continue to stay in that marriage or relationship. What will be your message to them this morning?
You need to find your life. That's my message. You need to understand that your life is bigger than the material things. Material things can be exhausted. Your life, on the other hand, but material things can be exhausted and can be replaced. Your life, on the other hand, cannot be replaced. And you must ensure you value your life much more than you value any material thing. When you can do that, you find out that you, from inside you, from your own life, you can produce that G-Wagon. So imagine a lady that has the capacity to be the CEO of a global brand, now saying, I'd rather be crying in a G-Wagon. What you've done is you've killed every CEO potential in you. When you can actually buy plenty of that G-Wagon. Okay, so look within you, you find out that there's a lot more than G-Wagon inside you.
And oftentimes when we discuss this issue, we really do not discuss the impact, the negative impact of these domestic violence on those that are raising children.
Yeah.
Because if you raise your children or your child in an abusive relationship or marriage, there is every possibility that that child or children will also repeat the same thing when they are married or they are in a relationship. Okay, so for those neighbors or for those ladies or guys who are very shy to come out and talk because of the stigma of the society, what role can their neighbors play?
So now...
Or friends?
Friends, yeah. So friends can, friends can help them find help. Okay. And one of the ways that a friend, if you realize that somebody is abusing maybe your guy or your lady friend, okay, one of the ways, now if it's one of the ways you can really help, for example, is call them out on it. Let them know you know. Okay, I know this guy is doing this to you. I know this girl is doing this to you. Go and seek for help. Now, if you tell them to go and seek for help, they don't seek for help. Find the one person they respect. That's step 2. And tell that person.
But some women or men will tell you that, okay, there's no third party in our marriage. Please mind your business.
That's another conversation. But it's always important that people know that there's a part that third party plays in marriage, whichever way we look at it. There's always a part. It's like when you're playing what or that joker card. There's a joker card. Sometimes you use it, sometimes you don't use it, but it's there. It's been there. You know that if you have it in your hand, you can win. That's what third party is like. It's always important that both party, husband and wife, understand that there is this person that if any of our head is touching, this person can always, come in and help us. Now, you may never need to use it, but it's always best when you know it's there. So when that is there and this friend knows, they can use that joker and say, sir, this person is going through this, please help. Now, this person will now intervene and know, okay, this is the next step you need to take. You need to leave. We need to get you counselors. We need to do all that,
All right, that's a very good point to end our conversation on domestic violence and knowing when to leave, whether you're in a marriage or a relationship. And of course, we have been given different strategies as to how we can manage or leave abusive relationship or marriage by Aremo Tobi, who is a marriage and relationship counselor today. We thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a very quick break on the program. When we come back, Joy and Adebimpe will be taking through their own conversation on the show this morning. Stay with us.